Okay, I think this is called live streaming. How's it going, everybody? I want to make sure I've got sound here. Do me a favor and let me know that you can hear me. How you doing? Chuck Holton here. Happy weekend to you. I hope you're having a good Saturday. I wasn't planning on doing a live today, but we have some breaking news I want to bring to you out of Gaza, out of Israel. The IDF has apparently made a strike against the number 2 commander inside Gaza of Hamas, a guy named Mohammed Deif, D-E-I-F. And Deif is a longtime member of Hamas, a longtime wanted terrorist, number 1, I believe, on the U.S. State Department's most wanted list since, I gotta go back here. Let's see. He's been the Israeli military's most wanted man since 1995. They've actually been trying to take this guy out for a long time, and he's survived something like 7 suicide bombing attacks. I'm sorry, not suicide bombing attacks, but assassination attempts by the IDF so far. Now, we don't know for sure that he is dead, partially because okay, Susan, I'll get to that in a minute. Partially because the hole is so big from the bomb that the IDF dropped on this guy that it may be difficult ever to find more than just a few pieces of him because the crater, I can't show you the video of the crater because YouTube will demonetize or close my account. So I put the videos that I've been gleaning off the internet over on chuckholton.com. You can go to chuckholton.com and see the videos that I'm talking about. But there is one video. Thank you, Luz. I appreciate that. There's one video of people scrambling around inside the crater, and it's bigger than a Olympic-sized swimming pool. It's a really big crater. I've been in lots of war zones. I've seen the results of lots of bombs, and I've rarely seen a crater as big as that one. That could have been a 500-pound bomb or even a 2,000-pound bomb. Now, it was dropped, some say, in a humanitarian zone that had been set out by Israel. Some say near that zone. But without a doubt, it was dropped in a rural area. This was not dropped in the middle of a big city. It was not dropped in a refugee camp or anything like that where the IDPs are staying, internally displaced people. There was a photograph taken of him not too long ago that they found. So let me just back up and go through thank you, Stanley. Let me back up and go through the timeline here. Yesterday or the day before, the IDF raided one of Deif's homes in southern Gaza. And what they found there, they didn't catch him, but what they found there were some identity documents. Thank you, Joseph. And those identity documents, among other things, may have helped lead the IDF to find his location where he was actually staying. Now, they say he was having a meeting with some other senior commanders this morning, again, in or near a humanitarian zone, near a camp where people were staying in tents, but not in that place. I do have a photograph, I think. I don't know if I actually got that to you. I may not be able to. Let me see if I can pull that up. See if I can pull up that photograph that I got. I probably can show you that without getting demonetized. It's amazing how careful I have to be. You know, it just kind of crazy, but it is what it is. So yeah, here's the location of the strike. I'll make that a little bigger. And as you can see here on the left, the before, and on the right is the after. Thank you, Wanda. Very kind of you. I appreciate that. You can see over here on the right, the after shot of the bombing. There's a giant crater right in the middle of where that kind of copse of trees had been. So there were not a bunch of refugees or internally displaced people living in there in tents or anything like that. The buildings, for the most part, are still standing, but there's a very large crater in that, in the center of that area. But according to the IDF, this was definitely a par for the course for Hamas. This Hamas commander, Mohammed Deif, was hiding among civilians, knowing that he was a target. And I have to say, if you're a civilian and you see Mohammed Deif walk by, I'd be running for the hills. Or if you saw Yahya Sinwar walk by, I'd be running. I'd be getting out of there with my kids. So I want to tell you a little bit more about him. And we will go through, some of what we know about this guy and why he was such a target. I have another image of him. Let's see if I can put that up here. Yeah, there it is. This is the last known photograph of Deif, and it was likely taken in that same copse of trees that they just bombed. I don't know, could be. It shows at least that they were hiding out in those kind of rural areas like that. They say that he was also killed with another, the top Hamas commander from Han Yunis. And so this guy, his actual name is Mohammed Deif Ibrahim al-Masri. And one interesting thing that Amir Tsarfati pointed out this morning is that, you hear all the time that the Palestinians are the native people of that land. They've lived there forever. This is their property, whatever. Al-Masri actually means the Egyptian. So his true name is Mohammed Deif Ibrahim, the Egyptian. And so that's interesting. Now, he was born in 1965, so that makes him 58, 59 years old, something like that. He was born in Han Yunis, in one of the kind of poorer areas of Han Yunis. They don't know a lot about him when he was growing up. He used to say that he had to drop out of school to support his family because his family was poor. He had 2 wives. His second wife was killed in 2014 in an assassination attempt by the IDF. His children, two of his children were also killed in that same attack in 2014. He has 4 other children. He graduated from the Islamic University of Gaza. Yes, he has US dollars in his hand there. We'll go back to that photo. You can see here the US dollars he's holding. Interesting, isn't it, that this picture was likely taken within the last 24 hours. Hi, William. Thank you for being here. William King's here. So what's he doing with a handful of US dollars? That's a good question. And they're only 20s. So he's got a glass of something that looks like tea in one hand, and he's got a wad of $20 bills in the other hand. Is he selling dime bags on the street or something? Not sure what's going on with that. Anyway, he joined Hamas in 1987. And Deif means guest. So Mohammed Deif means Mohammed the guest. And he got that name because he was always sleeping on people's couches, trying to move from place to place to keep from getting killed. He is believed to be responsible for a whole lot of terror. He's believed to be responsible for some suicide bombings. Obviously, he wasn't the suicide bomber. He sent somebody else off to do the dying. But they say that he, he was close to several other Hamas commanders who were assassinated. He trained with and learned bomb making from Yahya Sinwar, who was assassinated by the IDF. And he was behind the Jaffa Road bus bombings in 1996. He has overseen kidnappings and killings of Israeli soldiers, multiple. He became the commander of the Qassam Brigades, the military wing of Hamas, and organized a mass casualty bombing campaign inside Israel as retaliation for the assassination of Ayash in 96. He is likely responsible for the deaths of literally hundreds of people. Arabs, Israelis, and even Americans. That's why Israel kept trying to kill him. He became the head of the Al-Qassam Brigades after Israel assassinated their commander in 2002. Deif was seriously wounded in an Israeli assassination attempt in 2012. He was the overall commander of the Qassam Brigades and thought to be the main organizer of the October 7th attacks last year. He was also in charge of Qassam Brigade's procurement of weapons from abroad. Nice guy, this guy, geez. His nicknames among the Palestinians were the Mastermind and the Cat with 9 Lives. And it looked like it might have only been 8 because he survived 7 assassination attempts, and this would have made the 8th one. And so if, Lord willing, this one was successful, and he is now standing before the Most High God to answer for his sins, he would have only been the cat with 8 lives. He got a bachelor's degree in 1988. He had a passion for theater. He established a theater group called the Returners, as in return to Israel. Let's see. He took part in the first Intifada. He was arrested by Israeli authorities in 1989. And he was detained for 16 months. And then guess what? He was released as a part of a prisoner exchange, just like Yahya Sinwar. So if they had just kept him, this whole thing might not have been necessary. October 7th might never have happened. He was also arrested again by the Palestinian Authority at the request of the Israelis. In what year was that? In 2000. But he escaped with some assistance from some of his people. According to an Israeli journalist named Ronan Bergman, Deif's campaign of massive retaliation and the failure of Israeli intelligence services to prevent it was one of the factors that led to the defeat of the Prime Minister Shimon Peres and the Labor Party in 1996, and the victory of the Likud Party, bringing Benjamin Netanyahu to power. So that's kind of interesting that Benjamin Netanyahu, maybe in part, owes his position as prime minister to the antics of this terrorist, Mohammed Deif. Not that they planned it, obviously. Thank you, William. Nice of you. Now, before I go on, I want to go back because I saw somebody ask a question where they said, they were watching this YouTube show called Redacted, and they were saying that Israel was responsible for the civilian deaths on October 7th. Let me just say, first of all, Susan, you should not be watching. I mean, you can watch whatever you want, but if you want to get the truth, watching Redacted is not the way to do it. Redacted, without a doubt, is known for trafficking in conspiracy theory, massive exaggeration. They're highly anti-Israel. They're anti-Ukraine. And one of those outlets where they're so tribal. They're so against Joe Biden, and I don't blame them there, but they're so against Joe Biden that they just cannot bring themselves to see clearly the truth of what happens in places around the world. They only see things through the lens of what Joe Biden does about it, and they have to be against whatever that is. So if Joe Biden gives weapons to Ukraine, they got to be against Ukraine. If Joe Biden gives weapons to Israel, they have to be against Israel. And they go looking for things to satisfy their worldview. And there are many outlets out there like that. But look, the IDF was involved on October 7th in that they were not involved. October 7th was as bad as it was because the IDF failed to come to the rescue. And even when they did come to the rescue, they had an absolute failure of their command structure. I just read an article this morning about the kibbutz Be'eri, which is where one of the worst massacres took place. Over 100 people dead, more than 30 security personnel dead. And at one point, the IDF showed up at Be'eri and didn't go in to fight the terrorists because their commanders hadn't showed up yet. So the soldiers were there outside the Be'eri listening to the fighting going on inside there with the security guards and the civilians fighting against Hamas. And they didn't go in to help because, well, our commander's still on his way. He's not here yet. We can't go anywhere without our commander. Can't do anything without him. And then they did go in to Be'eri, and then the commander said, your job is not to fight. Your job is only to evacuate civilians. Get the civilians out of here. And so they left. They grabbed a bunch of civilians and they went back out of Be'eri while there were still terrorists running around inside Be'eri killing people. So it was an absolute clown show in southern Israel on October 7th. And that really comes down to just very poor leadership and very poor preparation on the part of the IDF. Now, the IDF had military bases down there that were supposed to protect those kibbutzim. The problem was those bases where the IDF had troops were the first targets of the attack on October 7th. And about 300 soldiers died in that attack. So the Hamas fighters basically went first into those bases, killed all the soldiers, took their weapons and vehicles, and then moved on to the kibbutzim. Now, or at least hit them not soon thereafter. Now, part of the reason for this is not, and this is the thing that just makes me kind of shake my head. No, the IDF did not plan this. I have some people that I know who just swear up and down that the whole October 7th massacre was planned by Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF in order to give them an excuse to go in and kill all the people in Gaza and clear out Gaza so that they can build a canal through Gaza from the Red Sea, which would take probably 20 years and hundreds of billions of dollars to do. I mean, it's just not a feasible thing to do anyway. And it doesn't make sense that they would want to put that thing right through Gaza. They could go right to Ashdod if they were going to do it anyway. They don't need Gaza. And so I just shake my head when I hear people say things like that. Of course, I mean, do you realize how many people would have to be in on it if Israel was going to plan something like that? And do you think that secret would get kept if there were people inside the IDF that were planning to massacre 1,000 Israelis? And besides, there's GoPro footage shot by Hamas of the massacres. And that GoPro footage does not show, in any case, Israeli soldiers going around shooting their own civilians. Now, some people say, well, they were killed from helicopters flying overhead. And they have this Hannibal protocol, which is sort of a idea. I mean, not an idea, it's a strategy in Israel that the IDF has had that basically says, look, if we get invaded by a large force of the enemy, the Hannibal protocol says our first priority is we have to kill the bad guys. And one of the bad guys' biggest strategies is to try to use our humanity against us by taking prisoners. But if we allow that strategy to work, we guarantee that they will keep using that strategy in the future and take more prisoners. So the Hannibal directive is that they will shoot to kill the terrorists, even if the terrorists are holding hostages. That the hostages, by necessity, have to take a backseat to killing the terrorists. And so there likely were some forces in Israel on October 7th who employed the Hannibal directive and saw vehicles moving back toward Gaza. And those vehicles may or may not have had Israeli civilians in them. And the helicopters fired them up anyway and killed the vehicles and the occupants inside, potentially killing Israeli citizens in the process. There was one case in Kibbutz Be'eri, I saw it, I was there after it happened, where an Israeli tank opened fire on a house that was occupied by a bunch of Hamas terrorists and some Israeli civilians. And they blew the house up and killed everybody inside, including the Israelis. Now, they didn't know at the time whether or not there were any Israelis inside. They could have, kind of guessed perhaps, but they didn't know for sure. And again, their primary directive is to kill the terrorists. And even as horrific as it is, the idea that you might have to kill some of your own citizens in order to stop the terrorists from taking more citizens as hostages in the future, because if you allow it to work, that the terrorists can just use Israelis as human shields. If you allow that to work, you guarantee more human shields as Israelis. So that's why they had to do it. But no, categorically no. The Israeli government was not complicit in what happened on October 7th. The Israeli government did not plan for October 7th to happen. The fact that it took them 7 hours to get any meaningful force down there comes down to three things. Number one, the force that was stationed down there that was supposed to take care of those kinds of things was all dead. Number two, they had never planned or trained for a massive attack that took over multiple kibbutzim and held them hostage and tried to hold them. They had only planned for like lone wolf attacks. And number three, a spectacular failure in leadership where the soldiers showed up and just either weren't allowed to go in or were afraid to go in because their commanders weren't there yet. It's those three things. Now, so, I mean, those are spectacular failures. Very, very bad. And this recent report that just came out about what happened in Kibbutz Be'eri makes very plain that those were the problems that they had. But to try to make the logical jump from that, which is, according to the Occam's razor, the simplest answer is probably the right one. That's the simplest answer. They were just spectacularly unprepared. But to try to go from that to make this, logical pretzel into there was some number of people inside Israel who wanted this to happen so that they could, that's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. So now, let's go on to back to Mohammed Deif. Deif also created a shadow unit within the Qassam brigades, a unit specifically meant to guard captives held by the Al-Qassam brigades, keep them alive, and thwart enemy attempts to find them. So there is a special unit that he oversees to try to find these. Now, when they apparently determined that they thought they knew where he was yesterday in this open area near Khan Yunis, when they woke up Benjamin Netanyahu in the middle of the night to brief him, the Shin Bet called apparently Netanyahu and told him what they had. Netanyahu's first question was, as far as you know, are there any hostages around him? And the Shin Bet's answer was no. We don't have any evidence of any Israeli hostages being held around him. Now, again, from the size of the crater that was left by the bomb that they dropped, it may never be possible to find out whether or not there was how many people were there. But I have to say again, that Hannibal directive, I don't know that would have stopped him necessarily. Politically, that's really hard to swallow, that you may have to drop a bomb on some of your own people in order to kill the guy that's been your most wanted terrorist since 1996. But that is very likely to be the case. And if they ever find Sinwar, that's very likely to be the case in that case as well. It's a real quandary. I'd hate to be in the shoes of Netanyahu having to make that kind of decision. You have some of our people on this side and finally finding and being able to waste the number one guy in Hamas on the other hand. And if I do this, I got to kill these guys. That's a really tough choice to make. But Israel has made it clear that they're going to do what they have to do. Thank you, PC. Very nice of you. Like I said, folks, I've been posting videos and photographs and stuff of what I'm talking about here over at chuckholton.com because I can't post them here on YouTube or it'll get demonetized. So if you'd like to go over there, you can see the videos of what I'm talking about. And I would recommend that if you're going to donate, do it over there on chuckholton.com because, number one, YouTube takes a 30% chunk of anything you donate here. But number two, it's kind of future-proofing my reporting because as we found out this week when I made a video about the Great Replacement Theory, they took it down and gave me a nasty gram saying that I could get my account suspended if I talked about stuff like that, as they were calling it a white supremacist conspiracy theory. All the while, I was literally showing the document from the United Nations from the year 2000, talking about we need a great replacement. And I wasn't actually. I was kind of saying that the UN. Well, I'm not going to go down that road. I already talked about that. But the point is, YouTube could yank this channel off the air anytime. It's their platform. And if I say something wrong by accident, I mentioned one word in that video that didn't have anything to do with the Great Replacement Theory. And I just mentioned offhand this word and it demonetized the video and got me a bad boy strike. So it does help to future-proof my reporting if you want to go and support me on locals. You can get there by going to chuckholton.com, and I recommend that you do that. Now, while I'm at it, please go hit the like button, folks. It really tells YouTube that people want to see this channel and that I'm, giving you information that you want to hear. We've got, let's see how many likes we've got. I'm on a, I can't see it. Anyway, go hit the like button, please, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you can get notified when we're going live with breaking news like this. So again, just to back up, because I know a lot of new people have come on, the number 2 guy in Gaza, the number 2 Hamas guy, and it's, you shouldn't say the word, the T word, I guess, is another word that'll get you in trouble on YouTube. He's one of the most wanted bad boys, people who foist fear on, what's the best way to describe this without using the T word? Criminals. That's been one of the most wanted since 1996 by the IDF. Was possibly killed, not for sure, we don't know for sure yet, but he was possibly killed by the IDF in a large airstrike that took place this morning just outside of Han Yunis in a kind of rural area where they believe he was hiding. The information was likely gleaned from a raid that was done on one of his homes down in southern Gaza yesterday. And there are some interesting things that were found down there. One of the things they found was his wife's UNRWA student ID. So Mohammed Deif, this guy that was one of the, most wanted criminals on planet Earth, and the head of Hamas, the Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing, his wife was a student at an UNRWA school. And so that's interesting. That's just great. And on that note, UNRWA, as you know, when they started finding out that there were at least a half a dozen or more UNRWA employees who took part in, probably more than a dozen, who took part in the October 7th massacres. These were on the payroll of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency in Gaza. There were a whole bunch of countries that yanked their funding from UNRWA, and rightly so. And yes, one tired mama, his wife was an UNRWA student, not currently, but previously. So a whole bunch of countries yanked their funding. They were down to 20% of their funding that they normally hope to get. And they're whining and crying and, we can't do our good work for these people. Yesterday I wanted to download this for you and I didn't have a chance. But there was a congresswoman in the United States in a hearing who claimed that UNRWA was doing God's work in Gaza. And she was immediately smacked down by a Republican congressman who started saying, what part of funding or teaching people to be terrorists? Oops, I said the T word. What part of teaching people to support Hamas is God's work? What part of allowing Hamas to use your facilities to store military equipment is God's work? What part of letting them make tunnels for the purposes of for military purposes inside your school buildings is God's work? He just went down this list and just sort of crushed her. So about 15 countries now have decided to refund UNRWA. Fortunately, the United States is not one of them. the UK just decided to redo their funding to UNRWA. And this is so maddening. I mean, because that organization should just cease to be. I mean, it just is, there's so much proof. Yeah, even yesterday, the IDF released a video shot inside an UNRWA facility, UNRWA headquarters, I think in Han Yunis, that showed military equipment, weapons, ammunition, all being stored inside there. It's just unbelievable that there are still countries out there that think, hey, that's a good idea, let's give them a bunch of money. It is unbelievably stupid. Now, fortunately for the United States, the U.S. Congress has been able to pass a resolution yanking the funding that we were giving to UNRWA, which was the majority of all the funding they received, until at least the end of March. And then we're going to have to go again and decide if we're going to continue to yank their funding. I mean, like I say, they should be completely just wiped out. I mean, they shouldn't exist. There are plenty of organizations that can distribute aid and assist the poor people and the people who need food or whatever in Gaza. I think it was a Democratic congressman from Michigan, but I may be wrong about what state she was from, Pennsylvania, Michigan, something like that. And I meant to download that and show it to you, but I forgot. So, Phoenix Rising says our ad blockers free. Some of them are. YouTube does run ads on these videos, and that's how Chuck Holton puts food on the table, is when you get those videos, those ads. If you don't want to get the ads, you can subscribe to YouTube's service like I do, and then you don't have to watch the ads anymore. So in Gaza, UNRWA could be replaced by the Red Cross, by Samaritan's Purse. There's tons of organizations that could do the job that UNRWA is supposed to be doing, and instead is just supporting Hamas. Speaking of wholly owned subsidiaries of Hamas, after this attack took place this morning, that may have vaporized the number 2. He's actually the number 3 in Hamas. It's Yahya Sinwar, number 1. It's the dude, what was his name? The guy that's in, I just spaced on his name, sorry. The guy that's in Qatar hiding. Let's see, where's his, I had it here. I'll go find it. The number 2 guy is Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh is the head of Hamas's political bureau, and he's the guy who's living in the lap of luxury in Qatar. He's technically the number 2 guy. And so Mohammed Deif would be the number 3 guy, but inside Gaza, he's the number 2 guy. And like I said, he was likely vaporized this morning in a very large bombing from the IDF after they believed to have found him. Almost immediately after the smoke cleared, the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry immediately started saying, more than 70 people, no, 80, no, 100 people were killed, and they were all school children on their way to a backyard Bible club. It's just like they always do, before it would even be possible to get an actual accurate count of the number of people killed, the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry is putting out ridiculous numbers of people, and none of them obviously were Hamas fighters. Even though the IDF has aerial video of this area showing armed Hamas fighters walking the grounds as guards for Mohammed Deif, they know without a shadow of a doubt that there were militants in this spot where they dropped these weapons. Now, and they also know that they weren't in a IDP camp. They weren't in a tent camp. They were near one, but not inside one. There are videos of the explosion from that tent camp, and it didn't flatten all the tents. They were, maybe a half a mile away from the bomb. And so, they got woken up for sure, but nobody in that tent camp would have been killed by that. The health ministry immediately is saying, oh, there were hundreds of women and children killed, and this is a massacre. They're dropping bombs and machine gunning civilians in the refugee camp. No, actually, they're not. They're not. Now, you've heard me complain before about the fact that the Associated Press is just ate up with pro-Hamas sentiment. It's almost impossible to find anything on the Associated Press website about this war that is not told from the Hamas point of view, as in, whatever Hamas would have decided to put out about this, any of these events. That's the story that gets told on the AP. And the AP is supposed to be unbiased, neutral journalism. And most mainstream media outlets get their news from the AP and Reuters. And both the AP and Reuters almost never publish anything that could be in any way positive for Israel or even just neutral. Everything they put out is as if it came directly from Hamas's press office. And I started wondering why. Like, who in the world is the AP relying on for these things? There's an article I was reading that came out about another bombing where they killed a Hamas commander a couple days ago. And it says, emergency workers uncovered dozens of bodies in Gaza City district after Israeli assault. Nothing in here about Hamas commander murder, taken out by Israel. Nothing in here about, the fact that these guys, these Hamas fighters, hide in civilian areas. And I'm like, how did they come up with this as a headline for the AP? Well, as it turns out, the person who wrote this headline and wrote the article is named Wafa Sharafa. She's a hardcore pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas Muslim who reports for the People's World, which is a communist newspaper, online newspaper called the People's World. So, thank you, Askeshka. Very, very kind of you. So, if you wonder why CBS and ABC and I guess, CNN and MSNBC, really, it's not surprising. Why their reporting is so skewed? Number one, they commiserate with Hamas. They're definitely on the side of the Palestinians. But number two, they are getting their news from people like Wafa Sharafa, who is a straight up hardcore leftist who reports for this communist, among others. She reports for a lot of, this is the thing, it's crazy. You look at all the different outlets that have syndicated Sharafa's work, and it's just right down the list. The BBC and, just every major news outlet, every mainstream media outlet in the world practically syndicates her work. You might hear the red alerts going off here. There are bombs coming in there are alerts right now in Kiryat Shimona and along the confrontation line up in the north, mostly Kiryat Shimona. And so if you get this app called Shofar, Tzofar, you also can get alerted when there are bombs. Very interesting to watch because especially since you are not seeing a lot of rockets out of Gaza anymore. When you do see them out of Gaza, it's surprising. And it lets you know that the IDF is not anywhere near done in Gaza. And the rockets keep coming from the north, from Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Hezbollah has said, Hassan Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah, has said many times, we're going to keep firing rockets at Israel until Israel pulls out of Gaza. Well, if Israel's going to accomplish its objective in Gaza, it's not going to be able to pull its troops out for a long time. It's going to be a while because they're still fighting in northern Gaza, Gaza City, where they originally went into. They're fighting, as you can see here, in Han Yunis. They're making progress. They're killing 100 or more terrorists a week. Oops, I said the T word again. But they haven't wiped out Hamas as an organization yet. And they're still finding tunnels, and they're still finding weapons caches, and they're still finding lots and lots of bad guys. And so if they plan on, even if they got Mohammed Deif today, again, we don't know yet whether or not he's actually was killed in this. Even if they got him, and even if they get Yahya Sinwar tomorrow, this war is not going to be over because they haven't accomplished their objective. Like I've said a couple times before, killing off just the leadership is not an effective strategy for wiping out the organization, because all you did is you just created upward mobility for the lower echelons, for the lieutenants that are waiting in the wings to take over as commanders. Mohammed Deif himself became commander when his commander was assassinated by the IDF. So it's not going to help to just take out the commanders. You're going to have to continue until nobody wants to fight you out of there, and that's going to take a while. That's going to be difficult. Now, Israel is saying that they're not going to stop until all of that actually is successful, but we'll have to see if they can hold out that long. One Tired Mama asks, can Israel not handle a two-front war? They don't want to have to handle a two-front war. And they need more time to store up weapons and train their troops and make plans to go into Lebanon if they're going to open up a front in the north. Because as soon as they cross the fence into Lebanon, Hezbollah is going to start firing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of missiles at Israel. And right now, Israel does not have the capacity to shoot down that many in the north. And so they would take a lot of damage. And whenever this happens, it will likely be the most damaging, the most destructive war Israel has ever fought if they go 100% against Hezbollah. But Hezbollah doesn't want that to happen. Israel really doesn't want it to happen, but feels like it needs to happen. But they probably, according to people I've spoken to that are living in northern Israel right now, those people believe it probably won't happen until next spring. We'll see. I'm going back to Israel in August, and I will be going up to the north and checking it out up there. So we'll have to see what happens. Let's see here. Somebody said, Okay. I'm looking for questions here. I thought I saw a question go by. What am I drinking? It's just a La Croix sparkling water. So, can they handle a two-front war? Probably. Do they want to? Absolutely not. Will they? Probably not. They probably will wait till they have a much better handle on what's going on in Gaza. And there's some sort of closure there in Gaza before they go on. Question, is there any communication among Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia about these threats? Yeah. Jordan and Saudi Arabia have actually helped Israel shoot down some of these threats coming from Iran and the Houthis. Israel and Jordan actually have a pretty good relationship. If you didn't know this, Israel provides almost all the drinking water for the entire country of Jordan by desalinating water and pumping it into the Sea of Galilee, and then allowing Jordan to pump it out of the Sea of Galilee and use it for their drinking water, for their people. That's part of their deal that they made. I think it's 30 million cubic meters of fresh water annually. I don't know, something like that. It's a lot of water. And when they had a 5-year drought and the lake level of the Sea of Galilee got down very low, Israel went out and built a whole bunch of desalination plants on the Mediterranean coast, and then built a long pipeline, super long pipeline, that pumps that desalinated water all the way up into the Sea of Galilee, so that they can continue to have fresh water, not only for the Israelis, but for the people of Jordan. So that's one of the things that Jordan gets out of this deal, and they probably don't want to jeopardize that at all. Question, who would Israel prefer to be president, Biden or Trump? They feel like, the people I've talked to, they like Trump a lot. They're happy with Biden to some extent, but unhappy with him to some extent. So they feel like Trump would be the better president as far as Israel is concerned. There's actually a group of Israeli Americans in Israel who are dual citizens, who started an organization called Israelis for Trump, or Jews for Trump, something like that. And I actually went and spoke to one of their, or not spoke at, but sat through an engagement where they had a meeting while I was there on one of my trips to Israel. Nice people. Question, does Israel have the neutron bomb? I think they just have normal nuclear bombs. Nobody really knows exactly. The Israeli government has never admitted to having the bombs, but it's known that they do have them. So let's see. Let's see. Bibi is not quiet. Yeah, no, he's not quiet at all. I get press releases from Netanyahu's office probably 4 or 5 times a day. So he's maybe not being given a lot of press time on the world stage, but he is certainly busy putting out the word for what's going on in Israel. And he was in the loop with this strike on Mohammed Deif this morning. He was kept abreast of it the whole time. So this guy, Deif, Mohammed Deif, again, they don't know for sure whether or not he's dead, but they hope he is, and if he is, that'll be the 8th assassination attempt. If he's not dead, he will definitely be the 9 lives cat, because he will have survived 8 assassinations attempts on his life. But let's hope that he's standing before God now, because all you have to do is read through this guy's resume, and he's a very bad person. He's responsible for a lot of death and suffering. And he himself has been responsible for a lot of death and suffering inside his own family. Because if he wasn't a criminal, if he wasn't on the most wanted list for very good reason by the IDF, then likely his first wife or his second wife and 2 children would still be alive today. So that's his responsibility, not theirs. Question, you talked about illegal migration and voting, how the U.S. has the face of not giving us Puerto Rican U.S. citizens to vote unless we're in the States. Carlos, I wish I understood what you were saying there, but that question wasn't very clear. Can you restate your question, please? Do you think there will be a ceasefire before the U.S. election? Well, I know that the Biden administration is pushing very hard for a ceasefire before the election so that Joe Biden can campaign on that point. Right now, the 2 parties are not very close to each other to coming to a ceasefire, although Hamas has taken a step closer to Israel by giving up its demand that before any hostages will be released, that there will be a permanent ceasefire, that Israel has to sign a document committing to a permanent ceasefire before they will release anybody. So they've given up that demand. Another demand they've given up had to do with the hostages. I forget. Anyway, there were a couple of demands that Hamas has retracted, moving a little closer to, or at least trying to make it look like it, but it's still not, they're not anywhere near each other. Question, we Puerto Ricans cannot vote for the President of the U.S. and we are U.S. citizens. Yes, I'm aware of that, Carlos, but that was not a question. So do you have a question about that? It doesn't have anything to do with the topic of this live. So maybe just send me an email. If you have a question like that, send it to me at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. And I will either answer you in the email or else I'll include it in future live. I know what it was. It sounds like they're coming closer to an agreement on who will administer Gaza after the war is over. They're talking about a coalition of Arab countries that will put together something like a peacekeeping force, and they will administer Gaza because Israel says the Palestinians can't do it. The Palestinians say Israel can't do it. So they're saying, okay, how about a third option? We'll just get a coalition of other countries to do it, kind of like sending Kenyan police into Haiti, and probably about as effective. One Tired Mama says, Carlos wants to know why illegals may be able to vote, but people in Puerto Rico can't vote. We're talking about apples and oranges here, Carlos. The illegals can't vote either legally. Puerto Ricans can't vote illegally. Cannot vote legally in the United States. But my point yesterday was that it's pretty clear that a lot of illegals are voting anyway, or at least trying to. So theoretically, Puerto Ricans could do that. They could come to the United States. They could go try to get a driver's license in a state like California, which automatically then registers you to vote. And then you could go and illegally vote in the U.S. presidential election. And that is what people have, not you, Carlos, but some people, I think, have a real hard time with comprehension. Because I feel like I was pretty clear about that. And I got a lot of comments on yesterday's video about that, where people were saying, how can illegals vote? It's illegal for them to vote. That's stupid. Well, yes, it's illegal for them to vote. That's the whole point. It's illegal for them to do so, but a lot of states are making it easy for them to vote illegally, to vote anyway. It's like, this guy's not supposed to vote, but he shows up at the polling place and the polling officer just goes, I don't see you, la, 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 and lets him go ahead and vote. Of course, it is illegal for them to do it, but it is still possible for them to do it because a lot of states have made it easy for people to cheat. I don't know what's so hard to understand about that. If a rocket accidentally hit the Dome of the Rock, who would get blamed? Well, Israel would get blamed. And it's amazing that Israel, how much Israel has protected that area from rockets during this war. How soon do you think there will be confirmation the attempted assassination was successful? 24 to 48 hours, perhaps, and maybe never, because he may have just been vaporized. But they're pretty good at figuring that stuff out. And so I think, if I had to guess, I'd say they will probably know within 24 to 48 hours. Okay? Wish I could remember the name of the reported went to the location full of migrants. The name and location of mail-in ballots were created, ballot harvesting with the list. Well, the Muckraker brothers did that. And they in Texas. My friend Oscar Ramirez was in Panama just recently asking migrants whether or not they plan to vote. Some of them said yes, they do plan to vote. Israel needs to, okay. But yeah, we need not just volunteers, but people to watch the voting places like hawks. And I think that they should have cameras installed and live stream those cameras for the whole world to watch so that everybody can see the process taking place. They need to do something to restore faith in our election process, without a doubt. So many people have lost hope and lost faith in the integrity of our elections and feel like we've become a, tin pot dictatorship or a banana republic. Question, is Hamas still requesting the release of terrorists from October 7th? I think you're... Oh, you mean okay, yeah. You're talking about prisoners? Is Hamas requesting the release of prisoners that were from October 7th? Yes, they are. As a part of their demands to release their hostages, they want to get some, dozens of, at minimum, of Palestinian prisoners, criminals who are serving time in Israeli prisons for killing Israelis, released before they will release any Israeli hostages. Okay. No, don't go vote for me. Question, are the Muslims not concerned about the dome on any missile trying to destroy Jerusalem? Well, Carlos, very few missiles have been fired at Jerusalem, actually. During the April, the 1st of April or whatever, attack by Iran, there were some rockets fired from Iran that were fired at Jerusalem. But before that, it was maybe just in the first couple of weeks after the war started on October 7th, was the last time that they had actually had a rocket, a siren go off in Jerusalem proper. Because most of the missiles and rockets that are being fired at Israel are being fired at areas in the north or areas in the south. They're not going much further past that. Some of them being fired at Tel Aviv. But very few fired at Jerusalem. Jerusalem is quite safe. And the Dome of the Rock, I think, is one reason why it's quite safe, because the extremists don't want to blow up their sacred shrine at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Phoenix Rising said, is there such a thing as friendly fire in Iraq? I can tell you, having been on the receiving end of that, no fire is friendly if it's coming at you. It's certainly not very friendly because it can still kill you. Friendly fire is a term meant when your own people are shooting at you. And it's actually more common than most people realize in combat, because combat is a chaotic, uncontrollable situation, and it's very difficult to maintain what they call deconfliction with the other units around you that are engaging in other missions. And so, yeah, there certainly is, by that definition, a lot of friendly fire in every war. Something like 20% maybe or more at times of all of the casualties taken in war are due to fratricide being fired on by your own people. Okay, so I think that's it. We're over time. So thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I am going to take the day off tomorrow. It's Sunday. Hope you have a great Sunday and go to church. Enjoy your family. And don't worry about the world being on fire, because it'll still be here on Monday. And there'll be plenty for us to talk about then. So, question, how can Israel support so many POWs with the economy so bad? Well, it is costing them a lot of money for all the prisoners that they are taking care of, for sure. And they've actually let some of them go recently because they said their prisons were full. I've made the case before that maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe they should let a bunch of them go and send them back to Gaza, because if they go back to Gaza, they are likely to pick up arms and fight against Israelis mano a mano and get wasted doing so. And it'd be a lot cheaper just to take them off the chessboard for good than to have to feed them 3 meals a day for the rest of their lives in prison. So maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing for them to do that. Thank you, Ask Ashka. That's very nice of you. All right. Well, thank you very much. Please, again, hit the like button and go over to chuckholton.com and subscribe over there. Again, I'm trying to future-proof my reporting and get to where I can self-fund trips to anywhere just from our loyal viewership, and bring you the news nobody else is bringing you in that way. What would happen if Hezbollah launched 5,000 rockets per day? There'd be a lot of damage, Gus, in Israel if that were to happen, because Israel can't shoot down that many. As a matter of fact, while we speak, my Shofar app is going off again, and they're all up in the north. Their rocket attacks and stuff up in the north. So, all right. Thank you very much for being a part of it, and we'll see you again next time.